It doesn't matter if it's 2 weeks or 2 months.
It does actually matter because
not.
economists are saying if it's closed for a few more months, then we're going to go into a recession. So it does matter. It absolutely does matter.
No one's predicting that because the markets that are all-time high.
No one's predicting that?
The markets that are an all-time high, the markets aren't predicting it.
With the oil markets?
The inflation rate has stayed where it is.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Grab a seat because this one got heated fast. Today we're stepping into a panel showdown over the war with Iran, and it turns into a full-blown generational collision. On one side, you've got Adam, a young voice who's done watching the same broken war promises get recycled. On the other, Noah, who keeps insisting questioning any of it is basically an insult to the troops. And right in the middle sits Bobby, a journalist who actually covered Iraq firsthand and refuses to let anyone rewrite the history he lived through. Things spiral into nukes, the Strait of Hormuz, and one uranium question that nobody on the pro-war side can seem to answer. Stick with me all the way through, because the strongest moment doesn't land until the back half, and trust me, you don't want to miss who gets cornered. Also, I'm always curious who's tuning in, so drop a comment and let me know what country or city you're watching from. I genuinely love seeing how far this channel reaches. Alright, enough from me, let's get into it.
For my entire life, the United States has been at war with some country in the Middle East, and young people have constantly been told that this will make us safer and make us better off. But when we look around at the world today, we are less safe and we are worse off. Millennials grew up watching all these headlines saying that Iraq had been, defeated, that we had taken out Saddam Hussein and we had killed all the bad guys. Well, that turned into a grinding counterinsurgency that cost us $1 trillion, and it was a catastrophe. The same thing happened with Afghanistan. And now Gen Zers are going through the same thing with Iran. We are watching the same people who defended these first two failed wars go on television and defend another failed war. This war is failing. We have not gotten any political concessions. And I'm sorry, I'm not buying this trust the process line. I don't trust the same people who got us into the prior wars, amassed trillions of dollars in debts, and are not putting America first on the global stage.
So putting aside, perhaps for a moment, even the politics of this current moment, I mean, is it fair for young people to have that level of distrust of the people, to Adam's point, who maybe defended the last war and were wrong and are defending this war too?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think, honestly, Adam, that's immensely ungrateful to American service personnel and the people who keep us safe every day. After 9/11, it was by no means guaranteed that there would be no mass casualty terrorist attack on American soil in the immediate aftermath of that attack, especially since we had events in Madrid, in London, et cetera. And after the attack on Iraq and the elimination of Saddam Hussein's regime, we took a terrorist supporting enterprise off the map. We don't talk about Iraq anymore as a threat to national security because it isn't. And those who would pretend as though Iran is not a national security threat, and are just frankly dismissive of the extent to which American service personnel get up every day to stop these people from executing the attacks on American and their allies that they plan every single day. This is a thorn in our side. It absorbs a lot of American taxpayer dollars, to say nothing of the energy of our service personnel. And I just think it's just ungrateful
I am so
to say
grateful.
that the service personnel are not keeping you safe when they are.
No, I feel less safe due to the actions of our leaders. I am incredibly grateful for our servicemen. And you're doing
your
these,
feelings don't make it a fact.
You are
your
doing
feelings, the way you feel doesn't make it a fact.
You are doing.
We are more
let me
safe with
finish.
Iran
He was
than
talking to me.
attack.
He was talking to me.
Hold on a second, Hal. I'll let you respond.
No one was talking to me.
Let him
Thing is a
finish his
problem.
thought.
You are doing the exact same thing that I just laid out in the opening. You are telling young people they shouldn't be asking questions. They shouldn't be questioning the people
I'd
in power
love
because
you
it's
to ask some
ungrateful.
questions about the nature of the
Okay,
Iranian
then what was
threat.
ungrateful about what I said? I said that the leaders are making us less safe, and I can prove that. Right now, Iran has control over the Strait of Hormuz, and that is a weapon they didn't have control of 2 months ago.
Of course they did.
You're
They shut down the
so
Strait of
wrong.
Hormuz in the 80s. And we opened it up in the 80s.
And by the way,
There was
Iran,
free-
was there free passage
Iran
to the
with a
Strait of
nuclear
Hormuz?
weapon? You think
2
gas
months ago.
prices are high right now? Iran with a nuclear weapon, we'd have unlimitedly high gas prices. They would take control of the Strait of Hormuz, and they would blackmail the world.
And how much farther away are they from having a nuclear weapon? Where's the enriched uranium right now?
They're non-existent.
Where's the enriched uranium
We're
right
going
now?
to get the enriched uranium.
No, where is it? I want you to answer.
It's buried right now. But
no, where is it buried?
You keep
You're-
asking me. I'm not in the classified briefings, and neither are you. So just
Where
be
is
quiet
it
for a minute
buried?
and let
We
me
know it's
finish.
buried in Iran.
Let me finish.
Okay, Adam, let him finish.
We are more safe than we were before we took out Iran's nuclear capabilities. Absolutely more safe. The Strait of Hormuz is going to be open, and Iran's not going to control it. That is
In 2
absolutely
weeks?
going to happen. It doesn't matter if it's 2 weeks or 2 months.
It does actually matter
It does
because
not.
economists are saying if it's closed for a few more months, then we're going to go into a recession. So it does matter. It absolutely does matter.
No one's predicting that because the markets that are all-time high.
No one's predicting that?
The markets that are an all-time high, the markets aren't predicting it.
With the oil markets?
The inflation rate has stayed where it is. And by the way,
What was inflation with Biden's economy?
unemployment has stayed low.
so
So
hold
when
on.
you're talking about everyone's predicting this.
Can you
that's
look
not
the
true.
average American in the eye?
This is the moment that should make every person watching stop cold. Because when an entire generation grows up never knowing a single year of peace, you do not get to call them ungrateful for asking why. Adam said this, when we look around at the world today, we are less safe and we are worse off. And he is right. You have to understand something, the people defending this war are the exact same people who sold us the last two. Same faces, same promises, same confidence, and every single time the bill came due years later, paid by people who never once sat at a comfortable table like this one. Here is what gets me. Instead of answering the actual argument, the pro-war side reached straight for emotional blackmail. Noah said this, "That's immensely ungrateful to American service personnel and the people who keep us safe every day." Notice what just happened. He could not defend the policy, so he tried to make you feel guilty for questioning it. That is not an argument. That is a shield. And it is the oldest move in the war sales playbook. But the part that exposes everything is the uranium moment. Someone simply asked where the enriched material actually is right now. A fair question. The entire war was justified on that exact issue. And the response? Noah said this, "So just be quiet for a minute and let me finish. Be quiet. When you cannot tell people where the threat is, but you can tell them to stop asking, you already lost. And then the economics collapsed too." The pro-war side claimed everything was stable, price is fine, nothing to see, and he got corrected on the spot. The panel said this, "Inflation has ticked up, it has not stayed the same. Small line, huge tell. If you have to misstate the basic numbers to defend a war, the war is not defending itself."
Just to be clear, inflation has ticked up.
Yes.
It has not stayed the same. But Bobby, you were around for the politics and the conflict of the last two Middle East wars. What do you make of this generational debate about whether it's wise to be going into another conflict in this region?
Well, I can't fault the logic that when you've seen this happen through your lifetime and you're still living with the consequences of it in one fashion or the other, you're bound to be reluctant to get into the war. Nobody is disputing for the fact that, for a moment, that the Iranians are the Iranian regime are bad guys. But when you hear the president and our leadership constantly changing the explanation they're giving for why we're at war, constantly changing the timetable of how long this is going to last, and then forgetting how long it has been going on, then you're right to push back and say, kindly give us a clearer explanation for why we're there, how long we're going to be there for. It's not enough to say, sit at this table and say, it'll be over, and then the Straits of Hormuz will be open. We've got no indication of that being the case.
Very clearly, the administration has determined, because they've basically ended the kinetic conflict of it all, they've determined that the only way to actually get the things that we want, which is Iran abandoning its nuclear ambitions, moving away from funding terrorism, is to get to the negotiating table, which is the same truth that existed a year ago after they did the first set of strikes. So, I think that's part of the problem, is that war has not necessarily gotten us the outcome that they say that we are trying to get here.
No, and that's because the rationale for the war has shifted multiple times. No one here has ever said we want a nuclear-armed Iran. That is a red herring at this point, because it's the only talking point that the pro-Trump folks have, because they've gotten themselves into a situation that they were unprepared for. And what's incredibly ungrateful, you know who's incredibly ungrateful? Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, for the men and women who are serving in this war, who are on deployments that are extra long, who are not getting their ships resupplied, who don't understand what they're doing over there, who are being taken for granted. Our military is the greatest in the world, and the men and women who serve are the greatest in the world, and they are being taken for granted as props in a political effort by Donald Trump to make himself feel better till he can distract from everything else that's going on domestically. And now he's gotten himself into a situation where he can't even explain cogently why we're there, what's going on, and why the American people should have to pay the price for it. So that's what's going on here. When I was a Republican for many years, we absolutely looked at Iran as the threat that it is, and absolutely were trying to do things to make sure that they did not continue to be the world's sponsor of terror. But this isn't it. This is not it.
Noah, you talked about Adam, you accused Adam of being ungrateful. I just want you to look at these charts. Look at what happened to public opinion when it came to the war in Afghanistan. Was it a mistake for the U.S. to send military forces to Afghanistan? The war started out as incredibly popular, and then it became much less popular. So about half of Americans said that it was a mistake, and about half said that it was not. The same is true of Iraq, incredibly popular, right decision, 72%, back at the beginning of it. And by the end of the conflict in 2014, it was down to 38%. I mean, are all of these Americans ungrateful?
And here's where a veteran journalist takes the whole thing apart without ever raising his voice. Bobby said this, constantly changing the explanation they're giving for why we're at war. That is the quiet line that ends the debate. Because think about it, if the reason for a war keeps changing, there was never one real reason to start with. First it is the nukes, then terrorism, then regime behavior, then the Strait. When the story keeps getting rewritten, you are not watching a strategy. You are watching a pitch being edited in real time. Here is what people miss. The pro-war side kept swinging the word ungrateful like a weapon, so Adam turned it right back on them. He pointed out who is actually being treated badly. Service members on endless deployments, ships not getting resupplied, people sent somewhere with no clear mission. Adam said this, they are being taken for granted as props in a political effort, and that is the truth nobody on that side wanted spoken out loud. You do not get to wrap yourself in the troops while using them as stage decoration. Then Adam lands the line I cannot stop thinking about. This is someone who spent years inside the conservative movement, who took the Iran threat seriously, who is nobody's naive peace poster. And even he looked at this war and said, but this isn't it. This is not it. When your own side's former believers are telling you the policy is broken, that is not weakness. That is honesty most people never find. And the moderator closes the trap with cold data. Support for the Iraq war did not stay strong. It cratered from overwhelming approval down to barely a third by the end. So the question lands like a hammer. The moderator said this. Are all of these Americans ungrateful? Of course not. They just lived long enough to watch how the story actually ends.
I mean, I imagine many of them they ended up tasting the consequences of the war, including the impacts on their lives, people that they knew, people who may not have even lost their lives in theater but came back forever scarred by it. I mean,
to clarify
ungrateful?
what I had said previously is that it is, in my view, ungrateful to American service personnel to say that they have not kept us safe when we do not measure.
That's not what I said.
Allow me to
But that's not what I said. But he didn't say that. So you have to acknowledge that he
He's
didn't say
saying that we can measure non-events, which is to suggest that the attacks that have not happened, which none of us are aware of, were not avoidable. Because of the nature of these conflicts. And the conflicts themselves are what inspires the attacks. It's almost inviting the notion that America is responsible for the terrorist.
That's not really the argument that he's making. The argument that he's making is that the people who made the arguments to go into these conflicts in the first place misled, which is a fact. And secondly, that the conflicts ended up lasting a very long time, costing a lot of American treasure, and those are also facts. He didn't say it's because they're they didn't keep us safe. That's not actually what he said.
Well, that is kind of what he said. But let's belabor the point. I have all the time in the world for criticisms of the president's rhetoric. All the time in the world. In fact, I think a lot of the reasons why the public is soured on this is because the president never approached Americans and solicited their support, told them the burdens they were expected to bear, and told them why they were going into this. But as important as it is to criticize the president's rhetoric, it's also important to talk about what's happening on the ground. And we are closer today to opening up the Strait by virtue of what we heard from Admiral Brad Cooper today and the operation that was engaged over the course of the last 24 hours. Very important.
I covered the war in Iraq. I was there for all the arguments going into that war in Iraq. I remember people saying this was the major sponsor of terror. And you pointed to 9/11. Iraq had nothing whatsoever to do with 9/11. And going into Iraq and toppling that regime, as much as I hated the regime as any right-thinking people, spawned from the direct consequence of that, the Islamic State, also a terrorist group that came directly out of our actions in Iraq. So, if we want to look at historical precedents, we should not cherry-pick little bits out of a larger picture.
Watch how fast the pro-war side tries to rewrite what was actually said, because this is the tell of someone losing. He tried to claim the other guests had insulted the troops by saying they never kept anyone safe, and he got shut down instantly. The panelist said this, but that's not what I said. When you cannot win honestly, you invent a weaker target and swing at that instead. Once you spot this move, you cannot unsee it. Then comes the line every young person watching needs burned into memory. The panelist said this, to go into these conflicts in the first place misled, which is a fact, not opinion, a fact. The people who sold these wars did not make honest little mistakes. They pushed a story they could not back up, and millions paid the price. That is the pattern, and Iran is being slotted into the very same machine right now. But Bobby brings the knockout, and he earned it, because he was actually there. Bobby said this, Iraq had nothing whatsoever to do with 9/11. Let that sit for a second. The single biggest justification used to drag a generation into the desert was a connection that did not exist. And here's the part history proves that invasion did not remove a threat, it created one. The Islamic State, the group that terrorized the region for years, did not appear from nowhere. It grew directly out of the chaos the invasion left behind. That is documented fact. That is what happens when an outside power smashes a country and calls the wreckage safety. So when these same voices now point at Iran and tell you to trust them, ask one thing. Why would a country sit quietly while a foreign superpower bombs it, then be told to act grateful about it? Iran is not the one launching wars across the entire planet. The real destabilizing force in that region has been the endless hunger for intervention, not a country standing on its own ground defending itself. And Bobby said it cleanest of all. Bobby said this: we should not cherry pick little bits out of a larger picture, because the moment you look at the whole picture, the case for this war falls apart completely. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.